Charleston County Board of Elections and Voter Registration is working hard to get voters registered for the upcoming election. Today, I talk one-on-one with the Executive Director of the Board of Elections and Voter Registration, Issac Cramer, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Issac Cramer, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks for having me, Quintin. It's great to be with you.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are the Executive Director of the Charleston County Board of Voter Registration and Elections. And if I'm not correct, obviously the mission of the Board of Voter Registration and Elections is to register citizens of Charleston County to vote, to ensure that the elections are free, impartial, fair, accurate, convenient, and accessible to all voters. And of course, you encourage voter participation to provide excellent customer service to voters, candidates, and the media, and to help the public understand and follow all laws, rules, and regulations in regards to elections. So tell me, what's new, what's down with Charleston Votes?
Well, we have a major election coming up in November. I think most people know by now we are in election season. You're seeing the ads on TV. You're seeing yard signs start to pop up around you. And this is a good reminder to be vote ready. We're pushing this message all across Charleston County. And to be vote ready means to make sure first that you're registered to vote. Number two, if you know you're registered to vote, to ensure that your voter registration is up to date. So you may have moved recently. You may have changed your name by marriage. You may have moved from one county to the next. It's really important that you be vote ready and check that voter registration. It's very easy. You can call our office at 843-744-8683, or even better, if you have the ability to look online with your mobile phone or on your laptop or iPad or tablet, you go to sevotes.gov, you'll put in your information, make sure that information is correct, the voter registration address, because if it has changed, we are pushing this message. Do not wait. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait till the last minute to update that. Do that now. And that's a simple contacting our office. We can get that information up to date. The voter registration deadline is October 6th. So it's coming right up, and we want our voters to be ready. And that's just looking at that registration, making sure you're good to go. We don't want to have any issues on election day at your polling place.
Let me break that down for you, Isaac. You said a couple of very important things right there. So how many people in Charleston County are actually registered to vote right now?
So we have over 300,000 registered voters in Charleston County. And some of those voters are what we call inactive voters. And that means that they have moved and they need to update their voter registration. So over the last couple years, we've sent out a mailer on redistricting when that happened in 2022, and some of those postcards bounced back, and some of those people moved within the county. So they need to update that address. And what we see in presidential election years is a higher voter turnout. So we're going to be around 70% voter turnout, and that means that there are people who haven't voted in 4 years. And they need to update that voter registration information. So we have a lot of registered voters, but we need to make sure that your address is up to date. It's plain and simple.
Plain and simple. So how many of those people are actually inactive right now?
Yeah, so we're probably around 30,000 people. I don't have the exact number, but it's probably around that figure. And that's not alarming. That's kind of the norm across the state. What is really important with that, and it's one of those things that we try to get that message out too, that if you had something mailed to your house, if it bounces back, there's protections for you as a voter. Because some people might be away temporarily. They might have gone on vacation, or there are many different life circumstances where that could happen. So they can show up on election day with their photo ID, and if their address has not changed, they just verify their address to the poll worker who's checking them in, and they sign and affirm. This is legal. They have to sign and affirm the voter's oath. Yeah. And that is saying that I live at this address. And when they do that, they're able to vote. So we want to make sure voters are aware of that. But the key message that voters need to understand, they have to check that information, because I cannot tell you how many people, Quintin, that will show up on election day and they haven't voted in 4 years. They haven't voted in 8 years.
Wow.
And their address is no longer the same. And then they're ineligible to vote. So We want to make sure that voters are ready ahead of November 5th to cast their ballot, plain and simple.
Now, Isaac, let me ask you this then. How do you and your team right now, leading up to election day, how do you close that gap with those people who are inactive as far as voting?
Number one, we have a voter ambassador program.
Mhm.
So, really awesome program. We just started in the last 12 months, and that's empowering members of our community to be spokespeople for our office. So, a lot of times, we get this all the time. How can I be more involved in the election process? I want to be a good steward in my community. I want to get the word out about elections and voting, and we hold the training with them so they can help spread that word with their people that they're involved with, whether that's church groups, civic groups, schools. So they're getting that message out that way. Number two is these conversations you and I are having, Quintin, that people are watching and seeing. So we've sent out notices, we've done press releases, we've done video interviews. And then lastly, which I think is really important, you're going to see a lot of messaging from us when you're driving your car. We will be on billboards across Charleston County heading up to the election to make sure that you know that you're vote ready. When you're sitting in traffic, you might see one of our signs on display.
Yes, sir, absolutely. So, in that particular program, Isaac, how many people do you have currently?
We have over 100.
Wow.
We have over 100 voter ambassadors.
Uh,
That's actually a remarkable number because if you think about this, it's if you think about grassroots efforts,
sure.
sometimes it's all it takes is one person who's connected to 10 people. So when we have our voter ambassadors, they're very connected people in their community. One of the really awesome things, we've had a lot of students who have signed up so they can be voter ambassadors in their schools because 18-year-olds can vote in the election, and those are high school seniors. We've had colleges. So one of the things we want to continue on in our messaging is that vote ready, making sure that when you show up on election day or during early voting, which we are going to talk about between you and I, that there won't be any issues when they go and cast their ballot.
Yes, sir. And I want to get to early voting in just a second. But what has changed with your particular messaging over the past 4 years?
I would say that our messaging hasn't changed. I would say that there's been an emphasis more on safe and secure elections and pushing that trust in election officials. It's the dynamic has changed over the last 4 years. We were kind of the behind the scenes bureaucrats who did our jobs, and if our names were in the paper or these interviews about elections, we weren't really the stars of the show. We were doing our job and doing it correctly. But now there has been a distrust in the election process, and that's not just one party or the other. It's just there's people who have questions about the election process, and that's a good thing. We welcome those questions. We welcome people wanting to be a part of the process. So our message really is our model is conducting secure and safe elections. Security, number one. That while I say our message has not changed, the emphasis for secure elections and safe elections definitely have increased in our themes over the last couple of years.
I know your office obviously enforces strict adherence to all current federal, state law, local, state, and local laws, that is, as well as state election board rules concerning registration to vote and voting. And obviously, you serve all citizens in election-related matters. So, in what way, Isaac, are you and your team completing your work efficiently without error to instill that public confidence?
It's really number one. It starts from our simple mission and knowing that's our mission to voters. Our job is to serve the voters of Charleston County. Number one, and the trust and transparency that we have. So it's dual. It's dual. So our transparency and openness about the election process. It's inviting the public in, and a lot of times people are like, "Well, I'm not really sure about this process or procedure." Well, come be a poll worker. We're inviting you. Come work the polls. See how it is. We have a very detailed security plan in our office from the sealing, the testing of our equipment. Right now, we're in the middle of proofing our ballots. Testing equipment is coming up really soon as we prepare for early voting and election day. So our processes and procedures, they have not changed. We've been steadfast in the security of our election systems, but the spotlight on it has only grown. So I want to continue to let our voters know that our election system is secure in Charleston County, in South Carolina, and nothing is connected to the internet with your voting equipment. So when you go vote, excuse me, on your we call it ballot marking device. So when you're touching the voting machine screen, that's not connected to the internet. It's an expensive ink pen. All it's doing is printing out your results that you've inputted. It's not tied to you directly. There's no name on it. There's no internet connection. And then when you go and scan your ballot, same thing. It's just a standalone tabulator unit. So that security measures that we have in place for that, that has continued. And number two, Quintin, one of the things we are doing is with our poll workers. We are a people-powered process. And people, Quintin, we all do. We're not perfect. So in an election system, we are people-powered. I think sometimes we forget that. So on election day, we will have over 1,500 people serving their community across this county, and we're giving them the training they need to ensure that they're following state law, federal law. And we need good people to work our polling locations every election. So being people powered means that, yes, every election, there will be people who are involved in the process. Therefore, there may be issues where there may be a mistake made at a polling place. But our mission at the office is to serve our voters while following the law. And if you ever feel like something happens at your polling place, you can call our office. We are accessible. We will listen. We will talk you through any issues that might happen.
Yes, sir. And two other points you brought up there. So, as of right now, how many of those ballots do you have to proof between now and say early voting?
So military and overseas ballots go out next week. In September 21st, I believe, is the date. Yes, September 21st. That's our first round of ballots. So we have a very short window of getting everything ready. So Charleston County, we have a lot of ballot styles. So we have a lot of offices on the ballot, a lot of districts. We have county council district, school district, constituent school districts, Senate districts, House districts,
Yes.
all of it, congressional district.
Oh, yeah.
That creates a lot of different ballot styles. So as we are reviewing that, but starting next week, September 21st, ballots will go out to our military and overseas voters, and then the first round of ballots to our civilian voters who are non-military, they go out 30 days prior to the election. So voters in Charleston County will be able to start voting before the early voting period via absentee paper ballots by mail 30 days prior.
So let me just jump right into it. What exactly is your game plan for early voting versus 4 years ago?
So we have, a lot's changed. So in 2020, we had in-person absentee. So early voting is still a new concept. It's only been around for 2 years. A lot of voters have utilized early voting, whether it's in the municipal elections or in the gubernatorial election or the primaries. But early voting, any registered voter can vote early. Don't need an excuse. You can just show up and vote early at one of our 7 locations. That's another big change. 2020, we didn't have 7 locations. Now we do. And that's one of the benefits of early voting. We're going to be in the community near where you work, you live, or you shop, you play. We will have that ability for you to vote early. And we have 7 locations, and I'll list them for you. The Baxter Patrick James Island Library, our headquarters here in North Charleston at 4340 Corporate Road, the Essex Village Church of Christ in West Ashley, the main library downtown Charleston, Seacoast Mount Pleasant, St. John's Episcopal Church on Johns Island, and then the St. Paul's Hollywood Library. So the beautiful thing about early voting, 8:30 to 6. Those are the hours, not 5. It goes till 6, Monday through Saturday, starting October 21st and the last day is November 2nd. And I want to be very clear: any voter, regardless of where you live, can vote at any early voting location. So that is a question we get a lot. Hey, I don't live downtown, but I work downtown. Can I vote at the library? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
As long as you're a registered Charleston County voter, you can do that. Number two, with early voting, if you've been mailed an absentee ballot, you cannot vote early. You cannot vote on election day. You have to vote that absentee ballot. If you choose not to vote that absentee ballot, you will then have to vote a provisional challenged ballot, which the board will rule on. As long as you have not returned that ballot, that absentee ballot, it will count. But it won't be counted until Friday after the election. So just make that very clear to voters that if you've been mailed an absentee ballot, vote that ballot, because that ballot will be counted on election day versus a provisional ballot that will be challenged and then heard by the board. As long as you don't return it, it will count, but that number won't be counted into the overall final vote until Friday after the election. So early voting,
So,
we're going to have plenty of staff, plenty of equipment. You can skip the lines on election day and vote early. It is very easy to do. We're going to have very well staffed locations, the equipment, parking, anything that you need from us. We're going to be there at early voting. And Quintin, I just want to make one really good point with
yes,
this with
sir.
early voting. I can tell you, we get number of calls on the Sunday or Monday after the early voting period has ended from voters who have emergencies, have a business trip, they have to leave town, and then they're going to miss the election. Please do not, if you know who you're going to vote for, do not delay and wait till election day, because an emergency can happen to you where you may be leaving town unexpectedly. And I can tell you, there are many sob stories that I've heard from a family member passing away to emergency surgery. There's many different things that could happen. So if you know who you're going to vote for, vote early. Those votes are tabulated on election night. It's part of the process of voting. It's very popular in Charleston County. We usually lead the state in terms of percentage of voters who vote early. So we're going to have 7 locations. Come and vote early. You're going to get great customer service while doing it.
And as you know, just like everyone else here in the Low Country, and I'm sorry about this lawnmower coming through, by the way, but there are obviously a lot of areas in Charleston that people are moving to from different areas of the country. How do you all keep up with that growth with smart growth?
I mean, for terms of just people moving into the county, it's education, and we want to partner with people who know, whether it's businesses in the area, nonprofits. Our libraries are an excellent resource because a lot of people go to libraries for information. I will say that, on the growth front, that's kind of out of our reach. But we are trying to educate voters, whether that's students. Quentin, I'm going to give you a really quick sneak peek.
Yes, sir.
We're going to be launching a children's book, written by our office with work with the library, for young kids, for bedtime story. They're going to have a really awesome book, and we're going to give more details in the upcoming weeks. But it's election season,
Yes.
and one of those things is I have a young son, and every night we read a story before bed. And this book is going to encourage parents to talk about voting with their children, and then bring their children with them to vote to see the process. So when you talk about growth and people moving into the area, sometimes you have to think creatively on how to reach them and talk to them about Charleston County in South Carolina, because odds are, if they're moving from out of state, they came from different laws, different election rules in their states, and our goal is to educate them on the process.
And obviously, as you know, the rural area is really the battleground zone right now for early voting and whatnot. We'll add more polling locations to those areas that are really in need.
Yeah, so polling locations, number one, it's the hardest thing for us to get sometimes, because there's nothing in state law that requires a location to be a polling place. And that's a challenge, especially in this environment. A lot of places don't want to be polling locations due to the politics, and they know there's going to be candidates, there'll be yard signs. So our goal is to find good location partners, because it's not just being a location. You have to be ADA accessible. You have to have parking. You have to have a room that can can be able to vote in. So ahead of November, and this is another good point, Quintin, when being vote ready is to know where your polling place is. So the board, based on several issues, some polling places that we had with ADA accessibility and locations that no longer can serve voters, we have made some changes ahead of November, and just want to highlight some of those for you. And so one of them would be in Mount Pleasant. So at the National Guard Armory, we cannot use that building for this election. So voters in Mount Pleasant 3, they're going to be voting at Hilton Garden Inn. Mount Pleasant 16, they're going to be voting at the Fire Department Station 3, which is like right across the street from the Armory.
That's right.
And then Mount Pleasant 15 will be at the Mount Pleasant Library on Mathis Ferry Road. So all those polling locations are right in the same area, but before all three precincts went to the Armory, now we've spread that out for voters for their experience. So that means no lines. They're going to be able to have the same amount of workers, same amount of equipment. So that is actually a big change because we can't use that facility. I want to highlight North Charleston 28. So if you live in North Charleston, you voted at Trident Technical College, they notified us that it can't be a polling place. So they're actually moving to Mount Moriah Missionary Baptist Church, right near the Walmart area, Chipotle, Target, all that part. So it's right past Trident. It's just right up the road. And all these locations are on our website at chsvotes.gov. It's a button at the top that says 2024 election information. So I'd encourage voters to go there. But also on SE Votes, you'll see your voter profile and it'll list your polling place. All the voters that are affected are getting a notification in the mail. They've already received that. And any questions that they may have, they can call our office.
Yes, sir. And from June to right now, Isaac, what exactly are your precinct boundaries?
They're the same. So the precinct boundaries in Charleston County are the same as they were in 2022.
Okay.
So the only thing I would say is redistricting. This is an important point, Quintin, because I want to say that it's been 4 years since the presidential election. So we put that message in 2022 about redistricting. Look at your sample ballot. Make sure you know because your district may have changed, not your precinct, but your district. So I want to make voters aware that Congressional 1 and 6, the lines have changed. So if you live in West Ashley, downtown Charleston, you no longer vote in Congressional District 1. It's Congressional District 6. That's the legislature sets those district lines. But voters who haven't voted since the presidential, they're going to notice their ballot is a little bit different. So look at your sample ballot. All those resources are at sevotes.gov. But know that, hey, some lines have changed. Like we have a new Senate District 80 there. We have, sorry, not 80, Senate District 20. We have a brand new Senate District 20,
Right. Yes.
which is James Island and some other parts. Just want to let voters know that you might not have voted since 2020. There are some changes to maybe your district lines, and we sent out a postcard back in 2022 about that. So if you have any questions, you can contact our office.
Yes, sir. And just let me know when you need to leave because I know you're busy. But what political party has the most registered voters thus far, from your perspective?
So we don't register by party in Charleston County
Mm.
or in South Carolina, so we don't have party numbers in that regard. But I
Okay.
can tell you that just in general, Charleston County is a purple county. You might have some, it can go back and forth in depending on the election year and the candidates. So, that we will have a lot of competitive races here in Charleston County. There are a lot of offices on the ballot, but my job, number one, is to give voters the best voting experience. So I'm giving them the mechanism to make their voice heard, which is voting their ballot. My goal is to ensure that they trust that process, regardless of what who they're voting for or what they're voting for. And that's, we're nonpartisan.
Right.
And our goal is all our poll workers take an oath to uphold the Constitution of South Carolina and of the United States. So we're all here to help you, the voter, exercise your right to vote.
What exactly is the percentage of registered voters who represents the number of people who are registered to vote as compared to the eligible voting participation?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's hard to parse the information 100%, but when we look at the county with over 400,000 total residents, we're sitting around 300,000 registered voters, so that's about 75% of those who are actually eligible at 18 and above. I mean, I would say we have a decent percentage of our voters are eligible people to register, already registered. I would say the biggest issue we have is making sure your address is up to date. That's number one. It happens every election. Most of our provisional ballots are due to address issues, meaning you move from one area of Charleston County to another area of Charleston County, not within the same precinct. So you move from downtown Charleston to James Island or Mount Pleasant to Awandon. You
Right.
need to update that voter registration. That's where we see the biggest issue. Yes, there are people that vote provisionally and their vote is not counted, so they show up. They're not registered voters. Their vote won't count, but they vote a provisional ballot. Yes, that is a small percentage, but the highest percentage of the people who get a provisional ballot on election day, it's due to an address issue.
And when you go back to June to those primaries, how many people were those in Charleston County?
Um, It was not many. When we have primaries, you have low turnout. So we had, I believe, 13% turnout or 11% turnout in the June primary, the first election. That number dropped to 4% in the runoff. So obviously, the numbers of provisionals are going to be a lot smaller. So in November, you know, we could see anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 provisional ballots, and probably 20 to 30% of those will probably be an address issue. So that's why we're encouraging the voters here in Charleston County, whether you lived at the same house for 30 years, please just look at your voter registration. Go to SC Votes, check everything is correct. We don't want to have our goal is not to be a hindrance to you and your eligibility to vote. However, we have to follow state law, and the state law is you have to when you show up on election day or during early voting, your address where you live has to match the precinct in which you're at. So if I kind of gave that a very simplified answer, but basically, you are not eligible to vote in a precinct you don't live in. That's the that's the short answer. You're not eligible to vote, even even no matter what. You cannot vote at that precinct if you're not registered. So you have two options. You on election day, you can come to our office in North Charleston, and I can tell you a lot of people don't want to do that if they live in a rural area 30, 45, 50 minutes away. They were like, it's not worth it to me. We don't want that. We do not want people to say it's not worth it to me to cast my ballot. So go ahead, get your address updated and correct ahead of November 5th.
Yes, sir. And I got 2 minutes left for you, but let me ask you this. Obviously, transportation is a big issue here in the Low Country. So, how does your office help those people who need to get to the polls get to the polls?
Awesome question, Quintin. And that's something we want people to have the ability to make it to a polling place on election day. And I know there's a lot of groups that will be giving free rides, but we have a great partnership with CARTA. So for election day, it's free. So if you are needing to get to a polling location, CARTA is offering free transportation to polling locations throughout Charleston County and our headquarters on election day. Also, during early voting, CARTA will be having a special line. Sorry, it's not special, but they're adding a stop to our office uh, during the early voting period. So North Charleston. But another good thing is downtown Charleston. There is CARTA Route 210, which is serviced by Free Dash Shuttle. Yep,
Right
and
back
that will
here.
stop at the main library. So during the early voting period, you'll have two options to take CARTA. But I want to make this really clear: is that do not let transportation be a barrier. Call our office if you haven't, if you're having an issue getting to the polling location, and we can help direct you to either a free resource or let you know about the bus options or CARTA options. Because there's actually there are opportunities with CARTA, especially with the disability community, to get you to a polling place. So please call our office. We want to make sure you have the right information and we can be the best resource for you to get to a polling place or early voting location.
Yes, indeed. And sorry, it's a dog right here. But also, I wanted to ask you this: how many people do you anticipate will actually vote on during that early voting period?
So I can look at statistics. That's
Hmm.
usually our best friend in elections to project turnout. And roughly, uh, the numbers have stayed kind of generally the same. We hover around 70% turnout in presidential elections overall. So that's over 200,000 people will vote in Charleston County. In 2020, COVID definitely changed the landscape of our numbers were steadily rising with people voting ahead of election day. But in 2020, we had over 100,000 people come in person. So it was about 102,000 people came in person ahead of election day to vote. My prediction for Charleston County with the 7 locations, 8:30 to 6, um, plenty of notice now for people to note about voting early. Don't need an excuse. We probably will be around 60% of the overall turnout. So my guess is over 110,000 people will vote early, which means about 100,000 or less will vote on election day, which will be lower lines for voters, which is a good thing. So early voting, we did 66,000 in 2022, the first year of early voting, and that was during a gubernatorial election year. My guess is that's going to be close to double here in 2024 for the presidential election.
And speaking of which, I forgot to ask you this earlier, Isaac. One last question for you. But how many youth voters do you all have registered thus far?
That so when you define youth, what is
Oh,
your? Are you saying 18,
it's
18 to 24?
well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, that'd be great.
Uh, I don't have the number exactly in front of me, but I can tell you
Yes, sir.
that it's usually our lowest voter registration total population. There's many reasons for that. There's college,
Oh, yeah.
people go away for school, um, and usually our number is probably less than 10% of our overall number are 18 to 24. Uh, but ahead of November, we are doing some events on the college campuses. We're encouraging our college students to work on election day. So I know you asked me this closing question, but we have a really awesome partnership with the College of Charleston where they're actually going to be teaching an elections class on campus. We were picked out of one of very few counties in the entire country to get a grant from the federal government, the Election Assistance Commission, to implement this pilot program, which hopefully will be a permanent program, where college students will sign up and work election day and actually help us recruit the next generation of poll workers. So this is my last plug, Quintin. We need poll workers. We need you to sign up and work. If you go to our website at chsvotes.gov, there's a button at the top that says Be a Poll Worker. We would love for you to serve your community. We need you to help us ensure that we have free, fair, secure elections in Charleston County. People that want to serve and would say, How can I get involved? Well, we need you on the battlefield with us, helping us serve the people that are our next door neighbors.
Isaac Cramer with the Charleston County Board of Voter Registration and Elections. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. Great
Thank
to be
you.
with you today.
Likewise.